Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's meeting of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee. It's a hybrid meeting, so it will be broadcast on YouTube. Just in time, Councillor Baccalini. So I'll move on to item 1 of the agenda, which is apologies for absence and substitutions. Don't believe we have any. Nope. Good. Are there any declarations of interest? Nope, good. And there are no matters to be resolved considered in private? No. Can we agree the minutes of the meeting that took place on the 8th of January 2026, please? Thank you. So I'll move on to the first item, which is the update on the performance of the Youth Justice Service. And can I just invite Councillor Jasbir Anand to make initial comments before I move over to the team, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and a very good evening to the panel members. Chair, the report actually provides an update on the performance of Ealing's Youth Justice Service against the 24-27 strategic plan. Chair, it also shows continued strong outcomes in reducing reoffending and improving education, training and employment for young people, with performance remaining better than the London and national averages. Chair, the report also highlights areas that may be particular interest to scrutiny tonight, including rising complexity and vulnerability among the cohort. There's an increase in first-time entrants, which is linked to the severity of the offences and the financial impact of remand despite relatively small numbers. Chair, it finally sets out a number of significant national and local policy changes, including new approaches to knife offences and deferred prosecution, which are likely to increase demand on the service without additional resources, and that is a concern. But officers will take members through the details and respond to any questions tonight, Chair. Just to remind the scrutiny panel, and I'm sure, Chair, I'm not patronising you here by saying there are no decisions required from the committee this evening, but the next report, which is due in June next year, 2027, will be the new Youth Justice Service Plan for the following 3 years for the period of 2027 to 2030, which will contain more detail and will require formal approval by the Scrutiny Committee. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Anand. I'll invite Ian Jenkins, please, to come and speak next. Ian is the head of the Integrated Youth Services. Thanks, Ian.
Thank you, councillors. Good evening, everybody. Before I start, I just wanted to say thank you to all for the last scrutiny that we came to. One of the recommendations from that was to write a letter to the Minister in order to try and persuade them to extend the turnaround funding. You may all remember that. I think they must have been listening to you, because they made a very quick decision after that to extend the turnaround funding, which was brilliant. And I know the chair actually wrote to the Minister to say thank you. So we're most grateful for your input at the time. It just gave us that imperative to continue on, and I'll address that as we come through. As Councillor Anand has said, this is to update members on the Youth Justice Service's performance against the strategic plan. And it does highlight strong performance, as well as emerging challenges and emerging risks. And it also highlights the policy changes, which I will come to in greater detail. But to start off on a positive, we've had strong overall performance, with Ealing continuing to outperform the London averages and some of the national averages, particularly around reoffending. And I'll come to that further in the presentation. But if you want to look at the scrutiny report, the graphs at the back actually give quite a good illustration of where we are in terms of reoffending against the national and London averages. Councillor Anand has quite rightly said that the rising complexity and vulnerability of the children that we're dealing with is very, very significant, from neurodiversity, special educational needs, looked after children, and they all have significant safeguarding demands. And this does have an impact on the team. And I just need to just reiterate that. Our first-time entrances are increasing, and the graphs will show it as you look at it only marginally. If you look at it, it's marginally per 100,000. But the severity of the children coming through for the first time means that we're not able to make very many diversionary opportunities because they go straight to court. Councillor Anand has kindly also identified the funding pressures are intensifying on us, with several national grants being frozen or reduced. The turnaround funding for this year is 33% less than originally. And though they've guaranteed it for another 2 years, there is no figure allocated to that. So we don't know what we will get next year or the year after. And it is such an important programme that we have. And another real key positive here is the multi-agency working and that we continue to deliver in partnership across the Youth Justice Service. Members will be aware that the Youth Justice Service works with 15 or engages children from 10 to 17, but our main cohort is 15 to 17-year-olds, with a disproportionate number of children who are from the Black British or the Black Caribbean heritage. And they have the children have significant neurodiversity needs, special educational needs. They're on education healthcare plans. About 30% of our children come into that cohort. And the most common offences that the children are involved in are violence, drugs possession, drugs supplying, those offences which we've talked about at several scrutinies. The snapshot on our performance, and again, I refer you to the graphs because I am a visual presenter. Our reducing reoffending is a real strong point for this borough. And our reoffences per reoffender, again, a very strong trait, and caused largely by the quality of the team that is working with them. We have bespoke assessments, we have very experienced staff, we have targeted commissioned interventions, and we have sustained support for the children. We actually even keep some of the children past the end of the date that we're supposed to until we've got them settled into a position where they are comfortable so they don't come back to us again. Our first time entrance, you will see, is on the rise, though the last quarter has seen a slight dip in terms of the corporate performance, but it is nonetheless very worrying. We have knife offences, serious violence, serious sexual assaults, and the drug supply, and members will recognise that we cannot divert them away from court. Those are the offences that really need to be at court, but we're there to support the children all the way through, and they are children. We look at every opportunity to try and take children out of the court system where we can, and that happens from the moment they're charged. We work with police colleagues through to the moment the CPS make a decision about whether they can continue to progress with the case at court. We try and work at every opportunity if it is an opportunity indeed. But with smaller numbers, our costs are rising, and they continue to rise, particularly around remands. It's useful to say that in 2012, when I first came into the service, we had 45 children on remand in a year. This year, we are at 4. So the direction of travel is very significant and positive. But you will look in the papers to see that we've spent on those 4 children nearly £440,000 on remand costs. We get a grant of £64,000 and the local authority pays the rest. So that is a very significant pressure to us. But if you look at the London figures, 30%, or not the London figures, the national figures, 30% of the children that are remanded into the secure estate come from London, and this is nationally. So they've set up the London Child Reduction Partnership, Remand Reduction Partnership, with London councils to try and get all of the London councils to work together to find a better way of reducing the number of children from London who are remanded into custody. And of course, it goes with saying that the disproportionality is very significant here again, with Black British and Black Caribbean boys predominantly on remand. Our education, training and employment is a very strong performance for us, and it has been for many years. in terms of how we regard children, the safeguarding measures in place, and what we try and do to really keep them safe. We're on 83% of the children are in education, training and employment when we finish, and we have many examples of children going on to Oxford University, Cambridge University, Bath University, or into employment and apprenticeships. So it's, you know, we do absolutely make a difference, and the partnership there is absolutely strong with ourselves, with our colleges and with the schools. I just wanted to highlight one particular initiative which the council, in partnership, well, actually Ealing Alternative Provision led on it, working out of the Young Adult Centre. They provide a service in there for children who are on the brink of exclusion. They do plastering, electronics, plumbing, cooking, sport, music, hair and beauty to children who are on the risk of exclusion. So they will go in there for a period of time with a smaller group and then go back to their school. The numbers are increasing all of the time, but it is such a valuable resource which all of the schools in Ealing recognise. On to turnaround and our early intervention. The turnaround programme remains remarkably effective, and remarkably is not a flippant comment. We take as many children as we possibly can. We work with them over a 3-month period to divert them and support them, and in some cases stabilise their personal circumstances. As I said, the funding has been extended for another 2 years, not at the level that we would wish, but that's life. But we are doing a lot of really good work, and we outlined that to you last year when you threw your weight behind supporting us for to the minister. Some good practice highlights. We get really good positive feedback from parents and children who we work with. We have them at our management board. We've had a parent there who was saying their child's life has changed as a result of what we've done. And there's others who've come, the children who've said their lives have changed. So that's got to be a good for us all. We have strong outcomes for children. Serious youth violence outcomes are very tricky, but we do manage to at least make it inroad to stabilising some of those children. Our out of court resolutions are going particularly well. Our turnaround programme is going well. The Lion programme is going well, so it's a lot of good work here. Our co-location with health professionals, with the police, with social care, with the substance misuse team is actually really good to bring and gel people together. It's always a shame when something doesn't go so well, but there's always learning associated with that. And one of the initiatives we've been piloting for the last 18 months is to have a bespoke GP surgery in the youth centre. The problem profile that we have with the children around violence, substance misuse, lent themselves very well to having a bespoke GP service. We did do some research prior to that on how many children were registered with their GP when they'd last seen their GP, but unfortunately the uptake was not good. So after 18 months in partnership with the NHS, that service has ceased. But we continue to market to the children the real need to engage with health professionals in their local GP surgery. The paper highlights some of the policy changes that are coming through. The Youth Justice Board itself is transitioning more into the Ministry of Justice, so it won't be quite such a standalone organisation representing the services of youth justice and ourselves buying into that, and that's likely to take place in April 2027. There will be a transition period. The YJB grant is frozen. It's frozen for the next 2 years, and that includes our remand grant and our core funding grant. The London-wide remand reduction partnership is coming to fruition so that we can try and find alternative ways to reduce our costs. The Metropolitan Police has been rolling out the deferred prosecution scheme around London. West London, or where we are now, will be the last area that will receive this. So we start next week. So we have to make sure that we are ready for that. I have no doubt there will be an increase in demand for services from that part, but that is a new and very significant change. And the national guidance on knife crimes, any child found in a school or arrested by the police or dealt with by the police must be referred to the Youth Justice Service for an assessment decision. and the timescales are very, very short on that. So we will reasonably expect an increase in that. And that's against a backdrop of reduced funding and the staffing levels that we have at the moment. So the risks going forward, I've mentioned funding. The risk is also our increased first-time entries increasing. I think that has to be factored into it. And the offence severity. I certainly know the number of children that are currently bailed to return and the number of children that are released under investigation. In total, it's over 120 children. And so looking at those offences, a percentage of them will come to the Youth Justice Service. And so we just need to be mindful of that. The policy changes will impact on us. And I mentioned at the start, the well-being of staff is something that I do need to consider very, very carefully in this when you are dealing with the highest risk children coming through. So overall assurance to the scrutiny, we're performing strongly. We're delivering, in my view, excellent value for money. We have some really excellent outcomes that have come through over the course of time. And we're achieving better than average outcomes in terms of our reoffending. And that's against the backdrop of the severity of the offences going up. The service is well managed under the management board. We have full partner engagement through that, which is really, really pleasing. Statutory partner engagement. And I come just to the last point again. It's worth saying, if you've said it 100 times, you may as well say it 101 times. Finance is still a big issue for us. And so that's a whistle-stop tour through the paper. There's graphs, there's grid square for information there, and we're very, very happy to take any questions to confirm anything with you.
Thank you, Ian. And I should say that we've also got Helen Harding, who is our AD on early help, and we've got Susie Greehall, who is our head of statutory enforcement here too. So unless either of you two wanted to add anything at this stage, I'll open it up to the panel for questions. Yeah. So I'll open up for questions and we'll begin with Councillor Wesson.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thanks, Ian, for the report. Just wanted to really recognise the positive progress that's been made over the past year. Congratulations to you and the team for the work that you've done. I suppose I've got 3 questions, if that's all right. Lots to engage with in terms of this report. So my first question is kind of what are the key things that you think will make a difference over the next year, and how will we know we're succeeding? Obviously, we're working towards developing a new plan, but this next year is going to be critical for us. Then just more in terms of some of the practicalities, obviously a lot of changes in the health and social care space at the moment, and just wondered if there was any impact of the ICB changes, particularly in terms of the liaison and diversion mental health professional within your team. And then my final question, I think you touched on this, but I'm very cognizant of the fact that we want to be protecting and fulfilling our duty of care to staff as well. So could you just touch a bit more on the wellbeing support that's available for our staff and the kind of supervision that I assume goes around that?
I'll start, and then I guess everyone can contribute. The key things that will make a difference, I think stability is something that we really yearn at all times. We have very good health input. We have a forensic psychiatrist with us. We have the liaison diversion mental health professional with us. We have the substance misuse team who work very closely with us. We have social care. We have very experienced police officers with us. There will be a transition of police officers, some leaving and some new ones coming in, so we need to manage that. So if we can continue as we are, then I think that will be very, very significant in this current environment. And how we know we're succeeding? Well, we've succeeded in a lot already, and thank you for the compliments that you've recognised here. And it's, you know, Susie's team really need to receive that praise. we are developing the next 18 months of plan now. We're due to submit it to the Youth Justice Board by June. So I'm happy to circulate that round prior to that. One area that obviously stands out, and I've mentioned several times, is how we address the disproportionality of children going through the criminal justice system. And we are perhaps slightly further down the chain in terms of receiving the children and trying to keep them out of the system. The deferred prosecution scheme will help. That came from a lambing recommendation many years ago, and was adopted by the Mayor of London and the Metropolitan Police, so that we could put positive interventions into place to reduce the disproportionality that's coming through. So how will we know we're succeeding? We're literally starting, say Monday, but it will be Tuesday, on the deferred prosecution scheme. We will keep very accurate data and very accurate records to see that we are making the difference, because that is an acknowledged way which the Mayor of London has said is that we will address the disproportionality with our partners from the police. So hopefully that, being stable and actually focusing on that area is key. The changes to health and social care, said we've got the liaison diversion professional. We've actually had them for many years already, which is brilliant. And our health offer was even stronger when we had the GPs in the premises, but with a forensic psychologist there to actually help. That's really key to me. But it's usually provides the immediacy of stabilizing the child. We then have to see how we move from ourselves to CAMS and further down the line, which is not as easy as it could be. We're fully engaged with the new Family First initiative that's taking place in Southall. So it will move from Southall, and then we will find out where the next area is. We are part of the board on that. It's still in early stages, but we are engaged with that. So in terms of the social care element, we are there. The health element, we are there. And I think we're doing with, it will be quite an exciting time if we can get that going. Protecting the well-being of staff. Yes, it very topical in how we do it. The managers do the supervision. I would get, I could just bullet point it, but I don't think that would be particularly helpful. But we do look at the well-being of staff all of the time. We have risk matrices of all of the children that they have, and so we do try and level out the risk that any particular one a caseworker is working with. They're not going to have 10 children or the highest risk possible. We moderate that. We obviously have a council-wide system of workplace options where people can receive support, and staff are encouraged to talk if they're feeling under stress. They're encouraged to talk about it. We will look to see if there's any opportunities coming forward about clinical support from an independent perspective. They have had it, and we need to just find a new route to progressing that and delivering it. But please, staff are our greatest asset, and they deliver a fantastic service to the children. We will be on it.
Thank you. I'm just conscious of time and that we've got a lot to get through tonight. So I've got 4 more questions. I've got Councillor Ball, Councillor Rice, Councillor Conti, and then Councillor Murtaza. And I would just say that Ian and the team are staying here for the next item. So if there were any questions that subsequently you thought of, you could always ask it then. But we do want to give some time to the police and the fire brigade and the set. So thank you. So I've got Councillor Ball next.
Thank you, Chair. I do have 3 questions. I hope that's still all right, given that. So it's always good to hear the great work that you're doing. So the questions I have are, the first one is the number of first-time entrants and also the severity of offences of them is increasing. So is there anything? Does that imply that anything different needs to be done in terms of the early intervention programmes to try to reach people before they come into the system? Second question is on disproportionality. You've already talked about that, but is there what part of the overall system contributes most to disproportionality? Is it the police or schools or courts or social care? Where's the biggest problem there? And the final one was in terms of increasing neurodiversity needs. Are the current speech and language therapy and CAMS provisions meeting those requirements, or is there a need for additional work in that area? Thanks.
In terms of the first-time entrants, it's a really difficult question because these first-time entrants are coming out of nowhere. So it's very difficult to sort of see where the intervention needs to take place. But we have created an early intervention before turnaround, which targets a small amount because we've only got a small sort of resource there, but which looks at those who have been excluded from school, so through our Ealing alternative provision, and also through our Connect team, so looked after children, because we recognise that the children are coming in from those areas. So we're trying to sort of early get in before they've had any touch on the police, to try and get in there. I guess that, maybe schools would need to sort of be more involved in the kind of earlier intervention. But as I say, it's very difficult to see these children coming because they're not known to the police before they come in with fairly significant offences. So we can't kind of do those early steps with them because they're coming in with robbery and things like that and going straight to court.
Quite happy to add to that. There's a life skills program that's being run in schools. So we're trying to get further ahead to try and take education programs into the young people on what's acceptable behaviour and not. So there is work that's taking place in that area. In terms of the disproportionality, I think it's a whole system approach that we need to look at. So the deferred prosecution scheme will help address disproportionality. That is a police-led initiative, which then involves the Youth Justice Service. We have the courts who are convicting children, and they can only convict what's presented in front of them based on the evidence. I don't think social care perhaps have as much to do with it, but certainly I think it's recognised that there are systemic issues in addressing disproportionality, and everyone needs to do their bit in order to make a difference. I guess if we look at, I didn't mention the speech and language professional that we have, absolute worth the weight in gold. If I could make a plea to them, it's like I would like more. Absolutely would like more because they're making such an impact working with the children in just the right way at the right time to help them. We have the forensic psychologist that I've talked about. We had the liaison and diversion there. That's a mental health professional. So we are dealing with it. But the issue is that there is a lot of children who have mental health needs and need support. So we are on it.
I could just add to that as well. What we really need is some educational psychology support. If we can have a day or a day a week or any amount of time, it would help us to try to get the children who are missed in education and now out of education through into an EHCP, because we often don't have a school place to sort of lead that work. So if we had an educational psychologist support, that would really help.
Yeah.
I'll just follow up on that.
Yeah.
So would that be resourced from the council or from CAMS, or who would be providing that?
I'm not quite sure because they are quite expensive, and also they are scarce, I think, and that's why schools struggle, I think, to get them through. So I think it would come through our NHS colleagues, but it would have to be paid for somewhere. So hopefully a combination of health and us and social care.
Thank you. So I
Chair,
can.
Chair, may I quickly add that listening to Ian and Susie, with all the complexity needs around the first-time entrant children, there's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes, but also shows that they come from some troubled families. There's a lot of mental health involved. There's a traumatized family situation. So by the time they've come through the system, these are the professional services that we really need to support the child through the process. And when those services are not available, this is where I think we feel as though we're failing the child. But the early intervention is a starting point for us to protect the child, but it might have complexity needs as they come through the system.
Can I just ask on that? Do we know what percentage of first-time entrants in Ealing are diverted compared to the top performing London boroughs, and why that gap might be? And is there anything, what we might learn from that? Okay. Yeah, please. Thank you. Okay, and I have Councillor Rice next.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, everybody. It's just one thing I haven't really kind of considered before is about the neurodiversity. So I'm probably carrying on a little bit from Councillor Bull's point on there. But when it comes down to SEND, I mean, we are aware of the fact that there are far more children coming through the schools with special educational needs. And I'm just wondering, are we seeing an impact on our service with the Youth Justice Service, or are we seeing a greater impact there? And how are we dealing with the fact there might be more neurodiverse children coming through than there had in the past? And also, I mean, one thing that when it comes down to young people, we talk about them being involved with crime, but also young people are very much victims of crime as well. So I'm pleased to see there's a paragraph here about supporting young people who have been victimised because of another child's actions. And I'm just wondering about, it mentions here about restorative justice, and I'm just wondering if we could perhaps kind of enlarge on what that really refers to, because reading the paragraph, it sounds like you're maybe asking the victim what kind of punishment they think she would mete it out. But I'm sure it isn't really, but I just wonder if I could have a proper understanding on that, please. Thank you.
So in terms of the neurodiversity, are we seeing an increase in our service? Absolutely. Huge amounts of children coming through, really a really sad picture of children that have both been missed. So coming into our service and for the first time being recognised as having neurodiversity needs and often being out of school. So as I say, really difficult fight then to try and get any kind of services in place for them going forward into adulthood. So yeah, huge impact, and we are doing our very best, and our health team are brilliant at trying to advocate for those children and trying to get the best outcome for them. But more resources would always be good, and it is quite difficult, as I'm sure you're aware, to get them into CAMS. So that's pretty difficult. So in terms of the restorative justice, it runs like a thread through the service. So we work not only with the children, but with the victims as well. So we have one victim worker, which is not a lot, but that victim worker contacts all the victims of our children. Some don't consent, some consent. Those who consent are always offered the prospect of being involved in restorative justice. Very small numbers take it up, and of course the restorative justice process, it has to be voluntary, so the young person has to agree and the victim has to agree, and then they have to agree at what level they will do that. So it could be just a letter of explanation from the child to the victim, and if they're willing to receive it, that's great, and it can repair that damage that's happened. And very, very rarely do the stars align and we manage to get a conference together, and that the effects of that are phenomenal for both victim and child. So it runs through, but it's very hard work to get them to actually come to the end. So yeah.
We have had one.
Recently. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Councillor Conti next.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry for my lateness at the start. It was really interesting and sort of outlined all the great work that you're doing. I guess as sort of a follow-up point about sort of the spotting these things earlier, I think it was mentioned that a lot of the young people, they weren't known to the system, or there weren't sort of signs. But clearly, obviously, someone doesn't go from not doing anything to committing a serious sexual assault overnight. And I guess where in that where's the biggest point of failure? Because I think Councillor Annan mentioned a lot can come from troubled families. They've probably had interactions with other services, you know, in the months and years leading up to the offence. And is it that, you know, these other services aren't necessarily then focusing on the child or the children within sort of that wider troubled family, so these things aren't being picked up? Or is it because they're out of education? I guess, I know it's not directly your service, but where are those points of failures, and what work is being done council-wide to try and address that? Because that seems like the biggest problem, is that these things aren't being spotted. And I guess the other question is, the nature of these crimes seem a lot more serious. So serious sexual offences and serious violence. Why is it that those are the crimes that are now, you know, that are increasing, with all the work that's been done over the years about sort of, you know, in terms of trying to prevent knife crime, etc., and education of young people, in particular how they treat, you know, boys treating women, etc. Why is that not working if the number of offences in those areas are increasing amongst young people?
Well, let's start with the spotting earlier, and probably a team effort on this one. When the children come to us, it could be a whole raft of risk factors that have resulted in the child coming to us, which in that case, they would be known elsewhere to partners in social care. But in other cases, it could be just one risk factor at the wrong time, which has resulted in that child committing a really serious offence for the first time. You have the full spectrum, and it's very, very difficult to say, where can we spot it? We can try and work with social care colleagues, and we do, ideally through the youth service. So when they come through the front door, where there's risk factors that are evident, we try and refer them into the youth services for support, for new friendship circles, for new places to go, new interests, new activities, new programs. So those take place, but unfortunately, the filter doesn't stop everything. So where is the point of failure? Every child is different. Every child and every family is different, and every child will react differently to a set of circumstances that are presented to them. So it's incredibly difficult, Councillor, and I wish I could give the answer, because I would make myself out of a job if we had it. So yeah, I can't add much more to that.
I can add a little in terms of when we're thinking about what's being done council-wide in that space. So we've got the Family First Partnership Programme that's now been stood up in terms of that agenda that's come down the line. We've also got the Best Start in Life agenda, family hubs, which is 0 to 19 offer. So it's around how we are engaging with families at that first point, but linking into those earlier intervention services, like Ian said, youth services, but the family hubs, the Family First Partnership. So the initiatives are very much focused at engaging families at that earliest point, where we might identify families coming forward for one thing, but then actually through that engagement, we're identifying that there might be something further that's kind of underlining within that family network that we can support with. So I think in terms of that council-wide initiative, I think it's very much that is the drive now around that early intervention and supporting families at that earliest stage. I think that's definitely on the agenda for the wider.
Thank you. So I've got Councillor Mataza next.
Thank you, Chair. And most of the points which I was going to make has already been made, but I will just touch on a few technical issues. The GP services, as my colleague has mentioned, has very little to play a part in it. Have you gone to your GP and see how busy they are, and they have got 10 minutes to deal with one appointment, and then it goes on from there? Here we are dealing with people who have got behavioral issues and mental health issues. Rather than directing the resources, whatever we have, to a general practitioner, what general practitioner can do, or GP or primary health care provider do, is to check have they got any physical disabilities or physical health problem? I think once you check and rule out any organic problems, for example, have they got any thyroid dysfunctions or anything which can cause into or manifest into behavioral issues, and then that behavior becoming a habit, we just need to get it vision checked once, hearing checked. All these small issues, they can actually then result into the behavioral problem. And then we need to identify whether this is a learning disability or a learning difficulty. So these are fine tuning, which we need to address at a very earlier on and focus and transfer the resources towards the appropriate occupational therapist, for example. And also, I would like to mention, Chair, that there is absolutely no harm getting help from the community leaders like councillors and the faith leaders to help those children. Purely health is not an answer, and I would recommend that focusing more on the other professionals like occupational therapists, speech and language therapists that has been mentioned. Thank you.
Thank you. Would you like to say anything in relation to that? Any of you?
Very, very briefly, in terms of the GP provision that we brought in, we recognise the value of the relationships that we have with children that have built up over a period of time, and we were not going to achieve that straight away with the GP. So we extended the times of the appointments from 10 minutes to 20 minutes to have regular appointments. And the first one would have just been a very, very, very short meeting. Hello, how are you? I get to know you, and introducing the service. And we would have relied on perhaps 3, 4, 5 visits before the child would have opened up. So we've absolutely taken on board, the short periods of time is not going to achieve a lot. We provided a very bespoke service for them so that we could, for the children and with the GP's input, so that we could actually try and make a real difference to them. Health is really important to the kids.
Chair, can I also add that although I'm a great advocate of faith organisations being our partners and have been the backbone of the community for many years, but I worry sometimes if there are no safeguarding champions within these organisations, then we will be opening ourselves to a bit of scrutiny. I think it's important if the groups of faith organisations want to be part of this process and working with us in partnership, they need to have their own safeguarding processes in place before we can actually reach out to them.
Thank you. Can I just ask as well, because the last time we had a government inspection in 2023, we were requiring improvement. Do we know when the next one might be, and do we know where we feel we might be on that journey to get to a good or better?
I wish we did. I genuinely wish we did. The team can only work as best they can at any one time. They are working very, very well under very, very challenging circumstances at the moment. I don't want to put my finger in the air, because as soon as I say that, they'll arrive tomorrow. So we will be ready when they come. It's nice. It would be nice that if we got an outstanding, aim for the sun and end up at the moon sort of thing. It'd be nice if we ended up there. I think the team deserve it. We're starting to prepare now, and so when they come, I'm hoping that we'll be more than ready.
Okay, thank you.
Chair, if I may also add.
Yes, sorry, go on, Councillor Land.
Chair, just to add in that the report actually highlights the challenges which are ongoing and will be going forward with those challenges. But I always say, when you have a partnership working together, it's the responsibility of all our partners and the local authority to make sure that we get over the line on these inspections. It's just not for Ealing. I think it's important where partners actually have their input into this as well. That's why we have the partnership board, to make sure that we are actually delivering best for every child, and every child comes first.
Okay, thank you all. I think that's the end of the questions for now. Do we have any specific recommendations that anyone would like to make? Councillor Ball.
Yeah, I think two potentially. So one is, I'm not quite sure how to phrase this, but clearly there's a need for more educational psychology support. So that there is a council provision funded by levy of schools, and there's also NHS provision. So I'm not sure who we would do a recommendation to, but maybe a recommendation for council officers and the NHS to work on trying to provide more educational psychology support to the youth justice service, perhaps. You poised on your.
Got some wording for you.
You've got some wording, excellent.
Yeah, I've anticipated this one. And Helen, I'm going to direct it to you. I think so. It will be that the AD for early help is recommended to investigate adding educational psychology support to the support services on offer in the youth justice service. Does that make sense? Everyone happy with that wording?
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you, Stan.
And then the other one I thought of was a recommendation to schools to flag up children who they feel are likely to come to the attention of the criminal justice system later, to flag them up to the youth service proactively. Very good.
So is this raising awareness, or is this more of a program?
Well, so sounds like there sounds like there's a bit of a gap, that there are children who get in trouble at school, and the schools could have an idea that they might get into the criminal justice system later. There seems to be a bit of a gap maybe in that information getting to the integrated youth service. So it's really is for to propose to schools that they start doing that. Does that make sense?
I understand where you're coming from. Yeah, we can give it our best shot, and we can raise the awareness. We have quite a good relationship with the schools anyway, in terms of advertising and marketing. Certainly the youth service and the youth workers go into the schools and say, this is what we're doing. And I think there's more and more buy-in. We have schools on the management board. So we do, that message does get back, but you can never do it enough times, so we'll pick it up.
Thank you. And Councillor Baccalini, did you want to add something?
Thank you, Chair. Yes. Well, Councillor Ball did touch base on this, but I wrote something in the lines of probably like helping the implementation of a faster track system to kind of prioritize high risk children with mental health issues to places like CAMS. I'm quite aware of the long waiting times that, like, currently our youth, not just youth offenders, but in general, youth are not really getting a fast intervention because probably of the high demand. So that would be one of the recommendations, Chair. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we try really hard anyway, and it should add value that we've got a forensic psychologist in the team in order to expedite that. It does on some occasions, yeah, and so we will continue to do it. All right, so I suppose if that's the phrasing, that we will continue to try and prioritize the children into CAMS.
I know that there are other organizations that support youth as well, not just CAMS. So if we could just probably liaise with more organizations to fast track the support that our youth are in need of, especially to help minimize the impact of offending and reoffending, specifically with drugs and knife crimes. Thank you.
Ian, do you feel that's a new recommendation that we could make, or do you feel that the service is already covering that?
I think if you phrased it to continue to promote that service, then we will continue to do that. So whether it's a recommendation or whether you're saying please keep doing it, we're going to be doing it.
I think if it's been done, it probably doesn't need to be reiterated. And Councillor Mohammed, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. My recommendation, maybe it's in the report and I haven't picked it up. What about the parents? I 100% agree that the child is the priority and they should be focused on the support that they need and the services. But the parents or the guardian looking after that child, what support mechanism and services is available to them to ensure that any support that the child is receiving is the right one and they can actually pursue that and continue supporting their child.
And likewise, can I ask you, Ian, is that something that we're doing already? We're doing it. Okay.
I was
Thank
just
you.
going to say at the beginning, I think you asked about what would be the things that would make a big difference. Having some parenting support in addition, because our officers support the child and they obviously work with parents and they do their best, but we're not there to support the parent themselves. So if they need help, then we have a service, Family Lives, that work with them, but it's a small resource. So an increase in that would be helpful. Yeah.
I think that's it. And Ian, if you could just send over the percentage of first-time entrants that are out of court, diverted out of court compared to the top performing London boroughs, that would be really helpful as well, please. Thank you.
Sorry, is that the parent support expansion will be added into the recommendation or is it one that is already existing?
It's one that's existing. Yeah. Oh. Thank you. Okay, I think that's it. So Ian, Susie and Helen, thank you very much for coming tonight and just well done with all the great work you're doing. And we appreciate what a challenging environment it is for you financially and with the complexity of the cases coming through and the changes with the government legislation and all the rest of it. So just well done and yeah, keep up the good work. We appreciate it. Thank you. So we'll move then to the next item, which is the Safer Ealing Partnership. So I'll invite Paul Murphy, Joe Blanchard to come up.
Full of nameplates on. I'll have to put the paper ones on the top so they don't have enough.
Okay. Yeah, you may need to shuffle the nameplates around.
Chair, if it's okay, can I
Yeah.
just in terms of just getting things sorted here, is it okay to invite up our representatives from London Fire Brigade
Please
and
do.
from police?
Yeah, please do.
Might
Paul.
need an extra chair as well, so I was going to pop and get one.
Okay, thank you. So welcome to the meeting. If I just introduce you, we've got Chief Superintendent Jill Horsfall, who's the Western Area BCU. We've got Inspector Mac Buckland, who's from the Met Police Ealing, and we've got Timothy Martin, who's from the London Fire Brigade, and he's the Station Commander for Ealing. And then we've also got our own Paul Murphy and Joe Blanchard, and the team are behind them. So welcome all, and yeah, I'll just Councillor Anand, do you want to start briefly?
Thank you, Chair.
Thank
It feels really good to be surrounded by the heavy sort of mob around you. I feel very safe tonight. So once again, thank you. It's really good to be here with the annual scrutiny for the Safer Ealing Partnership report. Chair, every spring, the Overview and Scrutiny Committee will scrutinise the work of the SEP, which is the Safer Ealing Partnership. So the report in front of you provides a rich, deep dive into the services the council run and commission to those that we work very closely with, all our partnerships, as Paul introduced them onto the stage. It outlines the work that we've delivered by the partnership in tackling crime and antisocial behaviour and helping our residents really feel safe in our borough. It sets out some very key successes from this year, Chair. That's including the local milestones in the Met Police turnaround plan and Ealing continued performance as one of the safer boroughs in London, stronger community confidence in policing and local services, and also stronger, safer neighbourhoods teams, which have been embedded in all our 7 towns. Delivery of violence reduction work, including work to tackle male violence against women and girls, which has been very focused for us over the years. The second successful renewal of Ealing Borough's wide public spaces protection order. Again, we were one of the boroughs who have been the trailblazers behind this order that's been a success across the country. Chair, the report also sets out some of the challenges the services have experienced during the last year and how they have responded to those challenges. Chair, the report also sets out plans for the year ahead. We have a challenging year ahead as well on how we're going to deliver on our priorities. You have here this evening senior officers from the police, the London Fire Brigade, and across the council's community safety service, which are sitting right behind us. I'd really like to thank them for being here tonight and for the work that they've really done tirelessly in delivering the report, and crucially in delivering the outcomes which have been evident in the report. The impact which is felt, of course, by our residents and our businesses. And a special thank you to our community safety team for their commitment, as you can see, for them to be here at the scrutiny meeting tonight to understand and present the report and be part of it. Their commitment means a lot to me, and their support means a lot for our borough. I'd like now to hand over to Paul to introduce the officers who are here tonight and say a few more words about the report before we take any questions, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor, and thank you, Chair. Around the beginning of every new financial year, officers from across the partnership attend this committee to present this report to you. You'll see some of the headline figures within the report. Ealing continues to hold a crime rate that is below the London median. You have a key role to play in scrutinising this work. It's a role you have under the 2006 Police and Justice Act and the 2007 London Government and Public Involvement in Health Act. There will also be requirements in the Crime and Policing Bill, currently at report stage, that really dial up the importance of this committee in scrutinising SEP partners moving forward. So you've hopefully had a chance to read the report. I know it's quite extensive. You'll note this year it contains an additional appendix as well that sets out the work delivered by the Safe Communities team, specifically in relation to responding to ASB involving our housing stock. The report itself also contains some contributions from familiar areas, so violence reduction, and you have officers here this evening who can speak with a high level of knowledge on that if needed. It also has areas of new work that are set out, such as the work we piloted last year in relation to tackling ASB in licensed properties and particularly HMOs. And Nora, who led on the pilot, is here tonight. I won't list everyone involved in pulling the report together. There's a very long list within the papers, but special thanks to Mehmet and to Jethro behind, who were fantastic at effectively just pulling this report together. There's a lot of partners who aren't here but who've contributed, and they're recognised in the front page as well. But critically, we have our 2 key blue light partners with us. So if it's okay, Chair, I'll hand over to them now.
Thank you.
I think what we will do at this stage, Chair, if it's okay, is we were going to say that we would take questions specifically in relation to LFP first, and then we would move on to police, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's
so
fine.
Up for questions.
So I'll open it up for questions, and can the committee start with Tim, Superintendent Tim Martin for the Fire Brigade first, please? If you've got questions for the Fire Brigade. Okay, well, we'll just open up questions if that's all right. Yeah. Well, have people got questions for the police lined up? Yeah. Okay, I'll begin with Councillor Conti then, please, and Councillor Rice next.
Thank you. I was just a couple of questions on crime in particular. So obviously overall Ealing ranks sort of like in the middle in terms of borough-wide compared to the other London boroughs. But I guess 2 areas that sort of were flagged on here were, one was sexual offences, which was up 12% on last year. Because I remember I asked this question last year because it was also in the red then. and it's also increasing at a higher rate than other areas of London. I think is rated orange here. Why? What is continuing to drive that particular trend, and why is it continuing to increase, at a higher rate than it is in other parts of London? And in terms of reviewing because I know one of the examples given last year about some of the work that was being done was, in particular in town centre, trying to move like men who maybe were sort of loitering around, trying to move them on, etc. What has worked and what isn't working? Because clearly something isn't working in terms of some of the steps that are being taken to try and address that. And then the second, which I thought was really stark, was drug trafficking, which was up 101%, and also up 43% year on year. So that's huge. I was wondering what in particular is driving that, and what particular steps are being taken to address that worrying trend.
Could you put the microphone on, please? Thank you.
I'll deal with your second question first, because that might be the more straightforward one. The drugs trafficking and drugs offences is a key sign of our proactivity. It shows that we have some very effective operations out there targeting those areas of criminality. The reason we do that is because it often leads us to serious and organised crime and other offences that are vital for us to get into. So that is probably why drugs trafficking offences are shown as increased, because we've done a lot of proactive work in that area in the last year with some very noticeable successes. In relation to sexual offences, that title covers a very broad range of offending behaviour. Without digging into it in a lot of detail, it's quite hard to answer your question. But what I will say is that some of it will definitely come out of increased confidence and increased engagement with communities. We've done, all our neighbourhoods teams and Matt's teams will have done some of this. We've done a lot of work in our local communities, doing walk and talk, being out there in the evenings, doing safety hubs at the public transport hubs in the evenings when people are coming back, which has led to an increase in self-reporting on the street. So I think there's a number of things, but I don't think it's easy to pinpoint one particular thing that's led to that rise.
You wish to come back, Councillor Conti?
So I guess the thing about obviously steps being taken to increase reporting, obviously that's all really, really positive. But that's, I think, a similar answer also given last year about that, people are feeling more confident to report. At some point, though, that sort of confidence in reporting starts to sort of veer away from actually that there is an increasing problem. And I guess when does that become? I guess when do you make that decision that actually it isn't just that people are becoming more confident reporting? Because there's been a lot of, in the media, etc., about trying to encourage people to report this for a very, very long time. The Me Too movement was about 10 years ago now, and ever since then there's been a lot in the public eye about reporting sexual offences. At some point, it can't just be that people are becoming increasingly more confident, that there is actually potentially an increasing problem around it, because I think otherwise you sort of almost say, well, there isn't an increased problem, it's just people are more confident, and therefore are we therefore implementing the right solutions to that issue?
Yeah, and I do agree with the point you're making. The thing I would say is that violence against women and girls in its broadest sense, which is both domestic and non-domestic, has been a key pillar of our New Met for London plan since the plan was first brought out. Was reinvigorated last autumn when we went with New Met for London 2. So that's been a consistent message we've been giving our communities in terms of the priority and the focus which we put on that. It's always been a very underreported area. I think it probably still is a very underreported area, if I'm completely honest. So it's very hard to say whether this is an increase in offending or an increase in reporting.
I'm sorry, I may just come in on just a slightly cautionary note on the data as well, I suppose. It's worth reading all three columns in the context of each other as well there. So it's definitely worth, and a very important observation that yes, the increase is on top of an increase last year. I often say do pay particular attention to the middle column, because that's where you get the unfiltered where Ealing compares to the Met average. And obviously there's something quite perverse, isn't there, about the fact that we're performing better against a Met average, but we've had a year-on-year increase. So it's a difficult one to figure out, but it's just a caution on the data that particular column, in terms of just looking at a rise on its own and not recognizing it in the context of other areas, is a bit challenging. But I'm just, yeah, absolutely. It does point to a broader problem, and looking at just the increase bit, and it will often be that challenge about, is it increase in reporting driving it, and is that because of increased confidence, or is it because of increased incidents? And it's a really, really difficult one to unpick, and it's something that we do struggle with. I think it's an answer that we've said a few times here. There's that natural tension between those 2 points. Is it increased confidence, or is it increased incidents? And we often then look back at the rates around domestic abuse, for example, and a good indicator on that is what proportion of domestic abuse incidents that are reported involve an element of violence. Because if you see an increase in reporting, but an overall lower percentage of incidents in terms of severity, that does point to what could be seen as the better picture, which is that there are more incidents being reported at an earlier point. But I completely agree with you. It's not a clear picture, and that data doesn't give a clear picture either. Sorry, I can't be more. Yeah.
I have Councillor Rice next.
Thank you, Chair. Right, so I just was delighted to see in the report, it talks about the cross-border coordination and the work done at North Isle Fields, and there was the unlicensed music events. I mean, that was my piece of casework there, and it was very much coordination. It was me speaking to the MP, getting him to speak to senior police, speaking to senior police at these meetings, speaking to London Assembly members, and eventually we got there, and the residents are very happy. I mean, just to fill people in. I mean, there were people coming along and playing loud music and dancing, and so it would happen right until about 5 a.m. And we had the bank holiday weekend where we had the Queen's funeral, so it happened 3 nights in a row. This was a very serious problem, so really great to hear about that. Now, what that makes me think about is just how important it is to liaise and speak to other people and to learn from other people as well. One thing I'm noticing is a bit of a theme going through this, looking at Harrow, is that they seem to have like lower levels of crime than surrounding areas. I'm trying to just really kind of summarise: lower levels of crime, lower levels of hate crime, lower levels of drug and alcohol use. That's how it comes across in their report. So I'm just wondering, am I reading that correctly? As Harrow seems to be some kind of success story. I mean, and what kind of work can we do in order to learn from other places about how well that they've been doing? And also, just another point, looking at the South Acton estate and the amount of visits that are made to the South Acton estate, that it's far and away far more than even some of the kind of the estates where there are gang violence, etc. In my local area. So I'm just wondering if we can enlarge it a little bit more as to why South Acton is such an issue. I'd like to just feel a bit more about that. And I suppose I could just add in a little bit for the London Fire Brigade and just ask about the lithium batteries and just see what kind of work is being done in order to look for alternatives to lithium batteries, since they obviously are such a huge fire risk. Thank you.
I suppose the best order to do those in would be the order they were asked. So there was a question about looking at good practice from other areas, in particular Harrow. I don't know, Jill, whether you wanted to make any observations on the crime data in relation to that first.
Yeah, so we do look at good practice from other boroughs. I meet with I have 11 peers across 32 boroughs. There are 12 of us. We meet regularly and we look at what's working for us and what's working for others, and we do look at best practice there. And our neighbourhood superintendents do that on a borough level as well. I also liaise quite closely with Thames Valley Police and Surrey Police, where our main arterial routes come to and from, to make sure we're aligned with them. So there is a lot of cross-border conversation and work that happens. Yeah.
Thanks, Jill. I would just add to that we obviously have a good cross-border relationship with Harrow's community safety team as well. Harrow is a very diverse borough in terms of social deprivation areas, hotspots, what the crime drivers are. We have a lot of synergies in terms of our North Holt and South Harrow. There's a lot of there are issues that are associated around crime and antisocial behaviour that are quite pronounced there. There's other parts of Harrow that are very low crime. It's always really difficult comparing comparing boroughs because they are so London boroughs can be so different, but we are always sort of sharing information and learning from each other. You had another question on South Acton Estate from the Park Guard report. I think that was that I can sort of tell you is more to do with the fact that we've had dedicated patrols there in relation to the regeneration of the estate. So in terms of building safety, actually making sure that the buildings are safe, and also around the decants and things like that have been going on because of the regeneration. So it's a bit of an outlier for that reason. I probably should have made that clearer in the report, so apologies. And then I think you had a question about lithium batteries.
Sure. So I think your question was alternatives to lithium-ion batteries. Is that right? So I mean that's not really an area that LFB would deal with. We kind of deal with the when they go wrong and the kind of the engagement areas around trying to educate people on the dangers of lithium-ion batteries. So we do a lot of charge safe campaigns. I know the London Fire Commissioner did a very public one in Piccadilly Circus, and we managed to put that campaign on top of the Piccadilly lights. We work with people like Deliveroo to educate their riders on safe charging of lithium-ion batteries, and work with residents in when and where not to charge their lithium-ion batteries, whether that comes from e-scooters or e-bikes. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it is actually helpful to know a little bit more about that, because I think it's, well, you know, technology hopefully moves on, and so we can do things in a safer way and in a more ethical way as well. And yes, and it's also just very useful just to hear a little bit more about the South Acton estate as well, Mr. Murphy, is because it does actually seem quite strange when you think South Acton is regenerating and you just think it'd actually be a safer place to be. But I understand it now. Thank you.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Weston next.
Thanks very much, Chair. Just a question for Met colleagues, please. So I'm aware that the Right Care, Right Person initiative was introduced, kind of shifting the responsibility for mental health calls from the police to health professionals. I just wondered if you had any assessment of what that means in terms of kind of officer time and what had been freed up as a result of that in an Ealing context, because one of the drivers behind that was obviously around freeing up officer time. So just wondered what that had kind of translated to on the ground.
If he can find any figures, but I think if I can speak generally, initially when Right Care, Right Person came in, the demand on officer time did reduce quite significantly. I think over time that has plateaued and crept up a little bit, which is something we are liaising with the Mental Health Trust in relation to. The other thing that's very interesting for me in relation to Ealing is Ealing has one of the highest numbers of 136 and 135 mental health instances out of the whole of the Met, and I'm not sure why that is, but that's something that's really apparent to me when I look at the numbers that officers deal with on the borough.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Ball next.
Sorry, Chair, may I just quickly add? Councillor Weston, when I was one of the trips on the response team, I actually witnessed where there was a mental health issue where the officers were involved and really didn't go away until they could actually get the right support for the person at the doorstep. We also had the fire brigade and we also had our ambulance service who stayed right till the end until the right support was in place for that particular person. I felt at that point the police were actually doing the advocacy work, trying to get all the agencies together to support this individual who'd made a 999 call and was in distress about certain things about his housing matters. But at that point, I felt the Met were taking over being a housing officer, being a mental care officer, and they were doing everything possible to support that particular resident to make sure all the agencies were involved to give him the full support.
Paul, did you have any insight into the point that sorry, I can't read the name from here. Chief from Superintendent Paul Smith made, yeah.
So when Right Care, Right Person First was announced, there was an awful lot of concern, I think, across the partnership about the impact it was going to have. And I think we potentially, the communication around it felt that it was a little bit, as a lot of things did, I think in the early days of New Met for London, felt like there was a degree of centre outwards and central decision making, and potentially boroughs not being consulted. But we also recognise professionally why the Met needed to do it that way. My perception, and it is just a perception, I wish I had some data that I could give you, I don't, but our perception, I think, as a team, are that we are seeing officers generally have there is a larger availability of police when we need them, and that's a positive. I think if mental health colleagues of mine that I get on very well with and work closely with were here, they'd probably still be making a strong case and saying, why isn't Paul advocating more for more interventions from police where it's needed? I think it probably has forced a conversation around professionalism across all services, including mental health services, and understanding generally when the right care is needed for people. And I think finally, there is just something for me about locally, officers are still dealing with these cases incredibly professionally. Uniformed officers are. I think in the early days of Right Care, Right Person, there probably were some close shaves in terms of decision making, possibly on 999 calls. And I think since it's embedded and it's gone from the theory to the practice, we've seen less of that being a concern. So I think I think if you'd asked me that question 6 months in, I would have been maybe a bit more concerned. At the moment, I would sort of just back up what Jill said, but at the same time, we don't have the data, and it's an interesting question that we might want to go away and get some data around that.
Right, so I have, oh, yes, Councillor Weston, you can come back on this point.
Sorry, because I mean, part of my role, obviously, as Health Scrutiny Chair, is to look at it through that that lens. But I think having that data would be really useful for us, actually, in terms of getting a balanced view. So we might come back to it, perhaps sharing the recommendations to get that data.
So I've got Councillor Ball next.
Yeah, thanks. So I've got two questions for the police side, and then I've got one council, but we're going to do that separately, are we? Councillor, but shall I ask all three?
You can ask.
Yeah, okay, cool. So yeah, the first one is I've had feedback from quite a few residents about where there's burglaries in particular, where there are CCTV ring doorbells or even more elaborate CCTV, and there's a feeling that there isn't proper investigation even when there is, significant evidence. It's sort of, you get a crime number and not much happens. I wonder if anything can be said about, whether it's possible to investigate some of these things more when there is video evidence. Second one is how to address residents' lack of trust in reporting hate incidents. And there was a consultation that showed a lot of concerns in that area, and I see that there is an action plan. But what are the kind of the key? What are the most important elements in helping with that? That perception amongst those communities. And then the final one is, as I say, for council side CCTV. I just wondered, is there a risk that adding additional CCTV cameras to when you've got the same number of screens in the control room, there's a bit of sort of law of diminishing returns? I mean, I know I've been and seen it. It's a very impressive facility, but ultimately, if you've got more and more cameras, but you've got the same number of screens, there's difficulty in terms of how many are live monitored. And looking in the stats in the report, there doesn't seem to be an increase in the incidents that are being logged on them in the way that there is an increase in cameras. And the number of incidents is sort of similar year on year, just going up and down, whereas the number of cameras keeps increasing. Okay, thanks.
Sorry, yeah. Burglary, they certainly should be following up CCTV. We do have processes in place that means that should happen. We do cooning after burglaries, where we actively encourage our PCSOs to identify potential CCTV that might have been missed by the initial reporting officer, or if it was reported online, to check that there's CCTV. We'd also encourage residents to sign up to Met Engage. because if they have Ring doorbells, then we can access that footage or ask them to check their footage through that platform. And that's been really useful for us, actually, both in terms of gathering intel and gathering evidence after offences. So if you think that somebody has a burglary that hasn't been investigated properly, I'd encourage them to get back in touch with their officer in the case, because we should be checking all CCTV within a reasonable radius, obviously. So I think that was your first question. Your second one was about trust and getting people to report hate crime, I think, which is particularly topical at the moment. And we are reviewing hate crime on a daily basis at the moment to see if there's any impact in relation to global and local events. I think for us, this goes back more widely to the work that we need to do to improve trust and confidence in police Met wide, not just within the BC or within the borough. There are several ways that we can do that and that we're trying to do that, but I think our most effective way is through our neighbourhood teams and that engagement they do at a local level and a ward level, and trying to encourage people to participate at a ward level so that we are working to their priorities, so that we understand what their priorities are. And again, Met Engage is a really good way to do that, to try and let people, by doing that, they can actually participate from their own homes. They don't have to come to meetings in halls in the evenings and things like that. They can participate from their own homes. So it's really trying to keep that two-way conversation. We have a lot of links in with faith groups as well. We don't have a dedicated faith officer anymore, but we still very much have the expertise and those links in with our key faith venues and communities. And we encourage them to help with third-party reporting as well.
Yeah, just in terms of setting priorities through the SNT meetings and so on. I mean, I think that may be sensitive to those issues more in some of the more diverse parts of the borough, but in the kind of more majority white areas, the people sitting around the table aren't going to be thinking about hate crime as much, so I'm not sure. There are still, obviously, everywhere in Ealing there are significant numbers of people from all sorts of different communities, but in some places they're a minority, and in some places they're a majority. I just wondered, isn't it the approach of seeing the ward as being the block that works better in some wards than others, doesn't it?
Sure, and I think when I was talking about ward priorities, that was more about overall trust and confidence rather than specifically related to hate crime. I think it goes back to, for hate crime, I think it goes back to our ward officers knowing their communities, building those links both with businesses and local residents, and being visible and making those links and building on trust day by day.
I've got Councillor Hamidi next.
There was sorry, Chair. I think there was a question on CCTV for me that you quickly wanted me. Just on the hate crime aspect as well, if it's all right, is that obviously we have actually done a consultation, which maybe we should have done sooner, frankly, but we've done a consultation this year, which will inform the hate crime strategy that we want to launch in October. That really focuses around improved pathways for reporting, but also improved confidence and understanding what's actually put people off reporting in the past. And some of that actually comes down to who they're reporting to and whether the person they're reporting it to recognises what they're hearing as a hate crime. Because if they do, they can start asking those questions, capture that information and get it reported through the right ways. There is quite a good indication of where we're performing relatively well on that in terms of housing ASB, in terms of our tenant satisfaction measure on that. When you look at, it's one of the key measurables, the percentage of hate crime cases that we're capturing through regular ASB contact, that was flagged with the in the Regulatory Social Housing Report this year. But yeah, this October, Hate Crime Awareness Week, we plan to launch our hate crime strategy, so we'll be updating next year on that. But in terms of CCTV, it's a really good question, because we have increased the number of CCTV, but like you say, CCTV cameras, although the incidents have captured went up quite significantly this year, you're right that despite an increase in cameras over, say, the last 5 years, you don't necessarily see the same increase in output. What I think you do see is probably increase in quality of outcome in terms of the quality of evidence captured. It's not just a capture of something's happened, it's actually an outcome that's led to a criminal prosecution. I think that's also demonstrated in the increased numbers of evidence packs that have been provided as well, and that's data that we can report back on too, because we definitely have increased in that. But also it's how, in terms of, you asked about, you've only got a limited number of operators, and that's true. Ealing does benefit from having a 24/7 presence of operators in the room. Not all boroughs have that, and they are constantly monitoring, as well as those cameras getting recorded and kept for 30 days or kept indefinitely if an incident has been spotted. Those same operators are trained in additional skills that maybe other boroughs haven't. I know other boroughs haven't in terms of Project Vigilant, and it was the police that delivered that training to us around capturing predatory male behaviour. And there was a final point I wanted to make on CCTV as well that I've forgotten. I'm sorry, but I might come back to it later. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hamidi.
Thank you, Chair. I'm a bit concerned because I don't know if the report that we have and where Ealing is performing is actually a true picture of what is happening in the borough, because we know that there is an issue of underreporting in our 7 towns, especially in Southall, and it feels like, you know, areas like Southall where is one of the most disadvantaged communities in the borough, I guess. People that aren't reporting, and it's not that they don't feel comfortable with reporting, it's just that English is not their first language and it makes it more difficult. Now, direct effect of that is that resources are being displayed, well, it's going around the borough by reporting. For example, Ealing's getting 7 additional officers, where Ealing is generally safer, but residents are reporting more. So Southall is not getting any. And I don't know what can the Met do to help and encourage residents to report more in those areas, because it's, you know, there are a lot of issues there, and I'm sure you're all aware of it, and we're trying to get more resources there, but more needs to be done to cover those areas as well, not just the areas where residents are able to report.
Sure. So Southall is an area that gets raised to me quite frequently. It hasn't had additional officers, as you'll say. So Ealing has had a small uplift of 1 sergeant and 7 PCs for its town centre team. But what Southall does have is all of Ealing's emergency response policing asset is based in Southall Police Station, which is, you know, a couple of 100 police officers come in and out of Southall Police Station every shift or every day. It also has a significant proportion of our proactive asset based out of Southall Police Station. So there is perhaps more policing activity in Southall than might first be apparent from that point of view. It does have enhanced neighbourhoods wards as well. It has a couple of enhanced wards at Southall, doesn't it? So there are a considerable number of ward officers based in Southall. I think the conundrum that you raise in terms of English not being a first language, and how do we open access there, and how do we increase the accessibility is a difficult one, and one perhaps that we haven't cracked in many communities, Met-wide or even nationwide, I suspect. That is very difficult. If you have any ideas that we haven't thought of or haven't tried, I'd be very open to hearing them. But again, there is a reliance on our ward officers. Quite a few of our ward officers do have language skills. Quite a lot of them are local or were brought up locally, and do have good connections to the community, and do assist there in breaking down barriers where possible. But there isn't an easy solution, I don't think.
Can I just? Yeah, it's just that it's not just the language part. Southall has one of the, I think, a lot of elderly residents as well, and they are not IT. They don't know much about computers, so it's difficult for them to go online to report, or when you call 111, you're on the line for 20 minutes to get through. And they feel that maybe it's not an emergency to call 999. So these are things that needs to be looked at for how do we reach to the elderly as well and make them feel confident and safe.
Councillor Anand, you'd like to say
Just to touch on Councillor Hamidi's question, which is very relevant, and I think I've raised that with the Borough Commander in my one-to-one every month or so, and Paul is my evidence, because I often would say that the footfall in Southall Town Centre is probably more larger than Ealing Broadway, but then I'm not saying that there isn't a need to have a town centre team in Ealing Broadway, but equally there is a demand that we also have the same kind of provision of a sort of a team within Southall as well. And I know that these decisions are taken at the top in the Met, and it's not something in the superintendent's hand or my hands or Paul's hands, but it's something that has been raised and brought to the attention of the superintendent so that he could advocate for us that there is a need to have a town centre team for Southall to see if we can also support the community better. You're absolutely right to say that we have an older population who are not IT savvy and will not be able to report it and will suffer in silence if they haven't got the right provision to support them. And again, this is where some of our faith organisations could be a backbone again for us, where they could help our older community who are regular visitors at temples and churches and Mondays, who could then try and help them to report these sort of incidents or crimes that they're facing. Again, trying to work on the partnership base with our religious organisations would be a really help for us. But honestly, that has been a push on that for quite a few months.
Chair, can I just add one more thing?
Yes, of course.
The other thing is that I do have the ability to flex our resourcing. We hold a monthly tactical coordination meeting every month. It was this week actually, where we look at crime patterns for the last month and the last year, and geographical hotspots. And in that, I will flex our resourcing. So the resourcing it's obviously finite, but it's within my gift to move it around, not just the borough, but the BCU as a whole. And I do that. And in fact, I did flex some resourcing into Southall for the next month. So.
Thank you. So I have Councillor Bacalini next, please.
Thank you, Chair. I would like first to thank you so much for the Met Engage platform. It's amazing. It provides a lot of support for it's ward focused, and it's quite important for residents, but there's a small mishap. Not everybody knows about it. And I feel so sorry and upset that when I do door knocking, a lot of our residents are not aware of this platform. So maybe perhaps it would be a recommendation to publicize and advertise more. It's quite important because it's very easy to get ward focused information of coffee with a cup or contacts to who to contact in your ward. It's quite important. But anyway, my main concern, I speak for my residents in Pittshanger ward, theft from vehicles and vehicle thefts. I know that I was looking, it doesn't really show how important and dangerous it has been a couple of months ago. And if you could just share with us any steps or any new strategy that you're implementing to tackle this trend, we'll be grateful. Thank you.
I was just thinking if Pittshanger came under Matt, but it doesn't. So theft from motor vehicle is theft from and theft of motor vehicle is problematic. Actually, it's a volume crime for us across the whole BCU. It's a volume crime across the whole of the Met, unfortunately. we still find with theft from motor vehicle that 9 times out of 10 the item that is stolen was visible. So the best possible advice in relation to that is for people to not leave items visible in their vehicles, because frequently that is the case. But we repeatedly do overt and covert policing operations to try and capture individuals who are stealing from or stealing motor vehicles, with some success actually. But it's one of those crimes that, you know, you catch somebody, you take them to court, somebody else comes along and takes their place. It feels a little bit never ending in that sense. So it's a difficult crime to make serious inroads on, but we do have operations in relation to it, and we do have some success.
Thank you.
Okay, Chair, I'll just quickly come in just to add to that, because it was, funnily enough, an item that came up at the Precision Crime Fighting Forum literally this week. We talked about it, and it wasn't that long ago. I think it was a couple of weeks back. Myself and Jethro were having a conversation just in terms of looking through the data and thinking, I think theft from motor vehicle, theft of motor vehicle, which is less common, but both types are high volume crimes, as Jill has said, and are often, I think, crimes maybe where the Safe Reading Partnership has thought it doesn't necessarily have a huge role to play, but actually maybe we do need to think about building something into the strategy around it, because, you know, what hasn't been tried. And I think some things as basic from a council perspective that maybe we haven't thought about before comes back to what Jill was just saying about raising awareness, for example. And it's not victim blaming. It's always, I think there's always been that shyness about not wanting to appear to blame people for leaving items. But actually, if you can educate people and talk about the areas, the types of items that are popular to be stolen, the manner in which they're likely to be stolen, the time of day, that would probably have a significant drive down in the level, particularly like what we were talking about earlier this week, Matt, in Acton, some of the ideas you've come up with there. So there is definitely something, there's a nugget of something there about how we can probably work as a partnership to address that goes beyond just policing, and it's something that's more of a whole system that we build into it. So I'm happy to take that away as something as well.
Thank you, Paul. But also theft of vehicles is on the rise, and nowadays it's really difficult to own a nice car. Like there are specific brands like Range Rover, BMWs, any electric cars, or theft from catalytic converter theft is also on the go now. As we speak, I just received an email from Copley, for instance. We've never had theft of vehicles from Copley, but it's happening. Like last week, it's been like on the rise.
Yeah. Most theft of motor vehicle links to organised crime. It's a very high value crime, which has quite often national and international links. Again, we have proactive and reactive operations, not just locally, but we have specialist crime support in relation to that, who are looking at offenders who are committing offences Met-wide. There's also definitely a role to play for vehicle manufacturers in terms of the possibility of making vehicles more secure and harder to steal. And those conversations are happening on a national level as well. So there's several different angles where we can try and improve that.
Thank you. And I've got Councillor Mohammed.
Thank you, Chair. I have a question for the police and the fire brigade. Is that okay? I'm just going to echo what's happening in Southall. As a Southall councillor and living in Southall, it is a huge problem with drugs and people using drugs. But I just wanted to understand a bit more. The report shows robbery and knife crime reduction. However, there's a sharp increase of drug offences. So what are your key measures that you separate that? Because when I go to the high street, I can see robbery between users and also crimes happening. So I'm assuming, again, what my councillor said, Hamidi, maybe there's underreporting on that, but it's happening. So I just wanted to understand what are the key measures that separates that there's a decrease on robbery, and then there's an increase on the drug offences. And my other question is, with the rising complexity in the safeguarding and missing children cases, where are the current pressures points in the police responses times and capacity? That's my question for the police. Shall I ask a question about the brigade? Thank you. The report highlights that there's increase in fires in domestic and supported living settings. What are the main risk factors driving this, and how are they being addressed locally within Ealing? My other question is, how confident of you are the home safety visits are reaching the most vulnerable, maybe individuals that cannot speak English or elderly or have mobility challenges in Ealing, including those with languages, health or mobility barriers? And my last question is just echoing what my colleague said about the lithium battery. You mentioned that there's been a big education London-wide, but what are we doing locally in Ealing? Thank you.
In order. Separating out the difference between the figures in relation to drugs and robbery is an interesting one, actually. We did have a spate prior to Christmas where we were stopping people who were drug users who were carrying knives because they were worried that they were going to be robbed. But I think it's quite unusual for if you're witnessing those kinds of offences. That's quite interesting to me because it's quite unusual for our drug users to report a robbery, because they naturally don't want to get in trouble themselves at the same time. So that is quite unusual. There is a link. How I could show correlation or causation, I don't know, but that there is definitely a link between drug use and some knife offences. Definitely. In relation to your second question around safeguarding and our response and our capacity, probably the two areas where we have the biggest demand and the biggest pressure are domestic abuse. The West as a whole, so the three boroughs that I have, the West as a whole has one of the highest volumes of domestic abuse Met wide, and my teams are very busy in relation to that. And then the other is missing and missing children, and we've done a lot of work in terms of our response to missing over the last year or so, including we now have a specialist missing hub who are our missing experts, if you like. And as part of that, we've made a real drive to make sure that we don't criminalise children as part of missing, because most children who are missing are actually being exploited rather than committing crimes of their own volition. They're frequently victims or being exploited to commit crimes. And we've done a lot of work with our officers to help them recognise that and make sure that we're giving missing children in particular the right support, rather than either criminalising them or not seeing the wider picture.
So I think your question came in three parts. So the 15% increase in dwelling fires, I think you could put that down to a changing people's living habits. A lot more people are working from home now. So where LFB as a whole used to see a greater number of incidents during daytime hours in kind of that central area of London, and then in the evenings we would experience a spike in kind of incidents in the suburbs of London. Because of the change in working patterns now, we're kind of seeing that increase in the suburbs during the day and night as well. I think also mentioned about lithium-ion batteries. There's a lot more of these in people's homes now. They do occasionally go wrong. sometimes the lithium-ion batteries aren't from reputable manufacturers, which leads to fires. I went to a fire the other day, and somebody had bought a lithium-ion battery scooter. They literally took it out of the packet, and within 15 minutes it had caught their flat alight. So that's a brand new battery. That's not a damaged one. So I think that can kind of explain that 15% increase in dwelling fires. Home fire safety visit wise, goes in conjunction with those dwelling fires. Every dwelling fire we attend, we do something called a hot strike. So we will visit the neighbouring properties to give some engagement reassurance work. We've got a dedicated community engagement team that's set up that we can mobilise out at 24 hours a day. Regarding looking at our most vulnerable, everybody that wants a home fire safety visit, that goes through a triage system, and depending on hitting certain triggers, we will deliver a home fire safety visit within 4 hours, 24 hours a day. So we will take a fire engine away from frontline ops, and we will send that fire engine to the most vulnerable people within Ealing within 4 hours. Otherwise, we have a 7-day kind of time frame as well, and it kind of goes down through that. What are we specifically doing with lithium-ion battery fires in Ealing? So we had a charge safe campaign on the doorsteps of this council building, which we worked in conjunction with Deliveroo and other kind of users of e-bikes. We're very visible with our community engagement work as well regarding lithium-ion batteries, not just lithium-ion batteries, but any types of home fire safety stuff.
And the residential settings?
Sorry?
Residential settings, increase in fire incidents?
So
you talked about the domestic, and the contributory factor is home working.
Yes.
But is there an increase in the residential settings within Ealing?
What do you mean? Is there an increase in residential fires?
Yes, in care homes, for example.
Oh, in care homes.
Yes.
So yeah, that's a slight anomaly. I think that's just, you know, a cycle of sometimes we don't have any, and then we get a few of them. I don't think we can particularly attribute that to any one kind of cause.
Yeah, thank you. And I have one final question from Councillor Anand.
Thank you very much for the presentation. There's a lot of work has gone into there, and I'm very grateful. I just have a question for what we're doing. It's leading on to about the crime and reduction, about begging and rough sleeping, and the link on that of rough sleeping and begging near train stations generally, and also the professional begging that's actually happening on tubes and on traffic lights, and I can see there's an increase in that sort of crime. What can we as councillors do to educate, or what can we expect can be done better, both from our sides and your sides, to reduce this? And Chair, I have something about when you mentioned about the reporting of crime, and you said that is there any suggestions? I don't know whether I can bring this in now or bring it in later. It's basically just a thought. I don't know whether it's happened already, where one could actually have special officers that are actually dressed up in civilian clothes in places of worship. And actually, the spiritual leaders are actually told, they tell that these people are here to help you. It may not be just for reporting, it may be just for educating. There's a reluctance, a lot of reluctance in coloured communities in trusting the police. But where it's actually done in a special officer goes in civilian clothes and is sitting with the people in there just as they are, and the spiritual leaders actually tell them that they're here for this reason and you can approach them. It's very similar to like we do surgeries. It's just a way of communicating. I also think the the generation of the youths that are actually in schools, if the children can also tell their parents that this, by reporting the crime, will actually increase. This is what we need to have, maybe some educational situations where the police actually go to these places of worship, also go to the schools and explain, especially in hotspots like Southall, where the reduction of crime is not being increased, where they're not reporting, and actually emphasize how important it is to report this crime. I've been in ward police panel meetings where we have been told by officers how important it is for the crime to be reported. So when we are, as councillors, given casework where there's something happening, we encourage, look, this is not a council matter, this is a police matter, and you'll need to report this to the police. And the more you report this to the police, the more allegation will come towards this particular area. So maybe some thought of what I've said and how we can better engage by having special officers in these places and educating and informing them. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, it's quite a pertinent topic. Cover Acton, so we've got Gypsy Corner up around Portal Way, where we for a long time had an issue with begging at traffic lights. You know, it happens along the A40. Quite often these are organised gangs. They move around. Particularly in Acton, it was a family that were involved of Romanian origin. We've got a secret weapon and we have a Romanian officer, so we overcome the language barrier quite quickly. It is a relentless sort of battle, because as soon as we've moved one group on, another one come in. So regarding the council, what we could look for is a problem solving option. Can we do things around the junction? I know that there's difficulty in the type of road, who has ownership, whether it's Transport for London and things like that, but it's often the design of the road, the barriers in certain places make it harder to people to get into the roadway itself. It is a challenge. I've gone the Elizabeth line myself, and I'm often experienced the beggars coming up, giving you the tissues and things like that. Yeah, so it is a challenge. From a police perspective, we can look at things like CPW, CPNs, protection warning notices, asking them not to. We would always encourage people not to engage with the begging side of them. I know it feels quite harsh, but we don't know the reasons why they're asking for money. It could be a question of referring them to the right services. We will do that as police. If there's homelessness, we don't treat it as criminality. We don't treat it as default ASB. We work very much in a referral frame of mind, where we will go there, we will do a welfare check, and we will refer them to support services. It's not always a popular response to the public, because they want us to go and move people on, but move them on where they're homeless, they haven't gone anywhere. So that's the way we approach homelessness. Vagrancy, the begging, as I said, is a slightly different challenge, with some of it being organised quite wide scale. I've certainly known of minibuses dropping off people in areas to do targeted begging for a day and then being picked up. But you're going into the worlds of modern slavery as well with that as well, quite often. So it's a very challenging area. The Met's done a load of work around of it. Certainly as neighbours officers, we're aware of that modern slavery type aspect, and we'll always, where possible, try and look at that. And it goes into all sorts of crimes such as shoplifting as well.
And in relation to the transport network, we are linked in with British Transport Police, because they have responsibility for the tubes and the trains, but we do sometimes do joint operations with them, and you will see them at the stations on occasion. So,
thank you. Did you have any comments in relation to Councillor Annan's point about special officers going in ununiformed and approaching maybe harder to reach groups to make them
so
more confident to report?
One of your colleagues did mention coffee with a copper earlier. We're very open to the venues we do those in. I'm happy to explore that as an option. I think in some venues we do already do that, in some faith venues. But if there are other venues where we'd be welcome, we're happy to have a conversation to see if that's an option.
Thank you. And I have one final last question from Councillor Martaza.
It's not a question, it's just a little comment. And it's regarding Councillor Annan's point of begging. I can't tolerate when a toddler is being either carried by mum or father and they are begging. And this is, in my opinion, a kind of a child abuse or at least child neglect. So I think maybe we could consider in those kind of scenario when parents who are begging or having children with them, that should be dealt with heavy-handed. Thank you.
Thank you. That I don't have any more questions. Did anyone have any specific recommendations? I've got. Okay, Councillor Johnson.
Perhaps we could have an item in around Ealing with telephone numbers, names, where people could contact, and maybe they could be sent to religious organisations in the borough, and they could organise for them to be translated and available in religious venues. Thank you.
Thank you. I think there was also one from Councillor Wesson, yeah, about the data, getting data. Did you just want to
Yeah, I
reiterate
think
that?
it would just be useful to have the data on person right care, so that we could do some further scrutiny around that moving forward. Particularly interested in kind of officer time that's been freed up as a result.
Yeah, we did find the Met-wide data, but I'll see if I can find Ealing specific data if it's possible.
Thank you. And Councillor Conti.
Just to the point that I was raising about sort of sexual offences and violence against women and girls and sort of the work that's being done in that space. I don't know if it comes to this committee or another committee that has looked at it before, but maybe just scrutinising that particular area and the work that's being done. And like I said, you know, year on year, I know it's a London-wide problem, but it is going up each time we see this report. So I just wonder whether a more specific item on that would be useful.
Yeah. So, sorry.
Well, I was thinking more when you were asking the questions earlier. I was thinking actually, I don't want to put words in anyone's mouth here, so please tell me if I'm going down the wrong way on this. Actually, I think there's probably perhaps a data collection point that could be made on this. Perhaps it could be a case of where these offences have been reported. You could ask, is this the first time this has happened to you? Have you reported it before? And you get a better idea then of whether it actually is the first time offence someone's had the confidence to report it immediately, or whether actually there's been a history of this happening and this is the first time they've reported it. I don't know. That was my take from it, but you know, I'm not a committee member, so please tell me if I'm going down the wrong route on that.
Chair, if I may, we have a quarterly strategic violence against women and girls board that Paul and others attend. We have it in a couple of weeks. I'm wondering if I can take this away and have a look at it and see if I can provide you with some answers through Paul at that board.
Be really helpful if you could do that, please. Thank you. Thank you very much. So any more, Councillor Midi?
Thank you, Chair. I guess this is more for the police, because at one point I was going to say about around Ealing, because it's on paper quarterly, and elderly residents, they like to read magazines, I guess, so that would be good to have information in that. Also, in particular in Southall, one thing that would work is leafleting. So you could leaflet about Met Engage, just send leaflets out with information about Met Engage, domestic violence, how to report a crime, even just basic information. And if that goes through people's doors, they will see it and it will remind them on how to do it. And it kind of shows that the police are being active in the area. So I think that would be a good way to reach.
So we have leafleted heavily around Met Engage, our community support officers. That's been one of their key roles for several months. What's really interesting is that Ealing does have one of the highest registrations. It's one of the highest boroughs out of the whole of the Met, actually. So take up has been very good. We will persist. We are keen to increase it, and I know that I know, Paul, you've published the QR code and various other things in your communications as well, haven't you? So we can check to see what our coverage has been like in Southall in particular, but I would be reasonably confident we've covered it quite well already.
I think it's just about points about how just the basics, how to report a crime and domestic violence, because that is a thing in Southall, and it's quite important to raise that awareness.
Chair, maybe some leaflets in faith organisations, voluntary sector groups, day centres might help people to sort of pick up a leaflet, GP surgeries.
Thank you, Councillor Hamidi. I think, oh, Councillor Wall.
So this is what I thought Councillor Media was going to ask for, so I'll ask for it. It was the point about whether we should request that the Met install a Southall town centre team along the lines of the Ealing town centre team, and because I think sounded like you were suggesting that, and I think other members were indicating.
Yeah,
it's higher up, but it's the Met.
But we could add our
broadly.
support to your requests or whatever, if the committee's happy to do that. Yeah. Okay, thank you. I think that brings us to a close. So thank you all very much for coming tonight. And I think it's a terrific report. It's really well put together. The graphics are great. It's very user friendly. And I think we really appreciate the way that all the partners are working together as such a strong team, and everything you're doing to keep all our residents in Ealing safe. So thanks again and well done. Thank you. Yeah, so that brings us to the last item on the agenda, which is the scrutiny work programme for next year. Sam, would you like to introduce this, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'll just wait for the room to clear for the commotion.
Yeah.
Well, maybe I'll begin to not delay you any further. So you can go out there and knock on doors now. It's probably too late for that, isn't it? Yeah, I've never seen OSC so full. Maybe you're avoiding something. I don't know. Good excuse. No, I'm joking. Tongue in cheek there completely. So yeah, this is the report that we have every year outlining the structure of scrutiny for next year. Of course, we have elections between now and the next first meeting of the new municipal year for OSC. There may well be some political change. There will be, regardless of that, we will have some new members, and a new committee. But it's always good to set a framework to work towards as we sort of constitute that new council and that those new scrutiny members. So I think the feedback is that the way we're taking scrutiny forward with sort of scrutinising areas linked to strategic directorates, it's working well. This year we've tried to involve cabinet members more. I think you've probably seen that on all your panels. Greater attendance from cabinet members and engagement there, and we want to continue with that. So proposal here is to continue as we have been. One small change is really just about the management arrangements of the Housing and Environment Panel, just as a bit of feedback from the Social Housing Regulator, just to help us with getting an even better inspection report next time, which is just to make sure we've got something on the housing, the progress report on the repairs. Yeah, every meeting. And there is, and you'll see on there, paragraph 8 as well, that there's a list of items that we've looked at this year but haven't been able to get onto the agenda for whatever reason, and they'll go on the sort of long list next year for the incoming chair to consider, along with anything else that members come up with in our work programming sessions. So really, I'm just presenting this for you all for your comment. If you've got any comments about it, if you'd like to amend the approach, hopefully get your approval on that. And if there are any other items that you think we ought to be looking at to stick on the long list for next year, more than welcome to tell me now, and I'll make a note of it. Or you can let me know in the let me know between now and then, and I can add them onto that long list for when we do the work programming for next year.
Sam, just a point on the repairs that you said, it was just the timing of the report and everything that they were doing, they couldn't do this year.
No, that's fine. It was no criticism of way it had worked this year. It was more making it clear as to the intention, so that we can we can evidence that to the regulator, I think.
Ben.
Yeah, it's just a minor point whilst we're talking about kind of clarifying roles and responsibilities. One of the things that came back from the CQC inspection was clarity in terms of the role of the Health and Adult Services Scrutiny Panel compared to the Health and Wellbeing Board. I think this report is an opportunity just to include something about that, so that we're crystal clear for next time round, so that doesn't become a sort of issue again. So happy to work with you offline on it, Sam, but I think we should probably do that.
Yeah, that'd be great if you want to send me your thoughts, or if you want to meet and talk it through. More than happy to do that. Yeah, thanks.
So is everybody happy with the proposed scrutiny work programme? Thank you. So that just leaves me to say thank you all very much for all your work this year, and thank you to Sam and all the officers involved. Thank you all committee members for all your commitment and questions and input. Much appreciated. And thank you to my vice chair.
Well, no, I was just going to say, and thank you for everything you've done, chairing our meetings over the whole year, making it very, very smooth and encouraging all members to get involved. So thank you very much on behalf of the opposition.
John. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Right, I declare the meeting closed. So thank you.